Wait, remember Star versus the Forces of Evil? Disney Channel's magical girl show that follows Star as she comes to Earth from another dimension and ends up living with Marco, who's not magical. Together, these two share in the worlds that they are from, with Star trying to fit in on Earth as a kid who goes to school, with Marco then teaming up with Star to go on wild adventures into other dimensions to fight off the forces of evil. Premiering at the start of 2015, Star vs. the Forces of Evil ended up gaining quite the following and supportive fan base, as it ran for 4 seasons with 77 episodes. While I had heard a lot about the series, I never ended up actually checking it out until recently, thanks to it celebrating its 10th anniversary, and I figured what better time than now to actually give it a shot. So let's see the good, the bad, and everything in between that Star vs. the Forces of Evil has to offer. Star vs. the Forces of Evil has you following Star Butterfly, a princess from another dimension who was given this all-powerful, all-magical, special wand for her 14th birthday. But things aren't all good, as Star isn't really the calmest child, and her energetic and reckless nature leads to her causing some trouble, and as a form of both punishment and protection, Star is sent to another dimension, that being Earth, as she now has to fit in as a teenage student going to school while she ends up living with another student named Marco and his family, with Star also needing to train properly to use the magical abilities of the wand. Of course, this isn't the only thing that the show has to offer. It isn't just a fish out of water story. There are magical interdimensional elements that would elevate what could happen on any given episode. The special wand that she has ends up being this item that a lot of bad guys want to get their hands on. So with the help of Marco, they end up having to face the threats and protect the wand from being taken by, well, you know, the forces of evil. They can also traverse dimensions thanks to these special dimensional scissors that literally can cut a portal into the air. And I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty cool concept. And speaking of things that are cool, I want to give a shout out to today's video sponsor, Vessie. I wanted to step into 2025 the right way, and Vessie is helping me do just that. Look, as someone who travels a lot to one of the wettest places because it's always raining, that being Ireland, this is the status of my current pair of shoes. Or should I say they used to be my current pair, because now I have some Vessie shoes and I haven't had a wet sock since. Whether I'm traveling and in a rainy location or at home on the East Coast dealing with the snow, I don't have to think twice about still going out and being active, because my Vessie shoes are going to handle all that the elements throw at it, all with a sense of style and feeling comfortable. Going outside and being active has been a big push for myself more and more over the past year, but this year, beyond just a New Year's resolution, I want to continue to take that to the next level and do so in the proper ways. And that's where Vessie has come in and truly made a difference. Recently, I've been wearing the Vessie Weekender sneakers, which gives you a relaxed comfort that has all the good stuff that Vessie is known for built right into them. They are durable to any element or weather condition, and yes, they are completely 100% waterproof. I still can't believe that that's a technology that actually exists, but it does, and you'll be a member of the Dry Socks Club too when you wear them. I no longer look at the weather as a blockade for me going outside or not, so now I am saying yes more and more, and nothing is stopping me. Rain, snow, or shine, yeah, I'ma still head out. Take your first step into 2025 with confidence and keep those socks dry with Vessie by heading to vessie.com/JordanFringe for 15% off your first purchase at checkout. Thanks again to Vessie for sponsoring this video. Star vs. the Forces of Evil would end up running for 4 seasons with 77 episodes in total, but with a lot of the episodes being split between 2 11-minute segments rather than being a full 22 minutes, there are 140 different segments in total. Originally, the series was meant to be made for Disney's main channel, the Disney Channel, but before the series premiered, it was moved over to Disney's Disney XD channel, staying over there for the first 3 seasons before the 4th would be on the main Disney Channel. Now, I want to talk a bit about all of the seasons and my thoughts on them and all of that. For the first season of the show, it's easy to see why it was so well liked and would become a mega hit for Disney. The animation is great, the color palettes are super vibrant, the characters and the voice acting are all really fun, and it really starts pulling you in more and more as you get these little bits of larger story that gets built up, as the show at this point is really just these self-contained stories that do have a beginning, middle, and end before the segment or episode ends. It's a solid introduction to Star and Marco and all of the wacky situations they find themselves in. Plus, getting to see the forces of evil have characters like the main arch nemesis of the series, Ludo, as well as bringing in the character of Toffee, really added a nice level of goofy yet threatening to the opposition Star and Marco have to face. Like I said, these are looser stories that allow for smaller in scope narratives that let you embrace the magic of what's going on, while still giving time to develop the characters, get to understand who Star is at this point in the series, and how she handles the situations she's in, as well as how she learns to deal with and protect the wand itself. itself. As far as the writing goes, I feel the show balanced action, the teenage experience, and the comedy really well, especially when you bring in some fun characters for Star and Marco to deal with, and you also see how these two deal with each other, having such a fun dynamic friendship that can definitely lead into the territory of something more between them. For example, in the episode Blood Moon Ball, where Star ends up giving an ex of hers another chance after he expresses that he has changed, and then she accepts going to the dance with him, Marco is overall worried and thinks that he hasn't changed and wants to basically save her from being around him. And while her ex turned out not to have really changed, it's the conversation that comes after where Star tells Marco that she needs to learn and figure out things for herself, and there needs to be this trust from him that she can also take care of herself. As she says that she doesn't need a hero, she needs a friend. This gives Marco a bit of perspective, and after this more serious conversation between them happens, their goofy nature really comes out, showing how close they have become and that there was a level of care for one another beyond just being friends in that awkward teenage way. This season ends off on a pretty cool cliffhanger that leaves you wanting to immediately hit play on season 2, with Star really having to deal with a life or death situation where saving Marco's life may just require the destruction of her wand, and beyond that, the aftermath of this decision, leaving fans who did have to wait between seasons with a lot to theorize and think about. It was definitely the moment for me where I felt most invested into where the series was going to go.
Star versus the forces of evil. We'll be right back. Back to Star versus the Forces of Evil.
The second season would end up expanding both in season size, now getting 22 episodes compared to the first season's 13, and in the way of stepping away from the self-contained episodic format and starting to build up a story that weaves itself through it all. Plus, you can really feel how much is added here that takes focus, mainly with a fun assortment of characters, as well as deeper and honestly darker storylines. Star would now come into this season with the results of the end of season 1, now having this new half of a wand, and begins focusing a bit on training in a more trickster-like way thanks to the character of Glossaric, who's someone we met in the first season who resides inside of Star's Book of Magic. There's also another character named Mina Loveberry, and they are clearly inspired by Sailor Moon, which is directly tied into the influences of the show's creator, and I'll get to that in a bit here. But her character is someone who Star looks up to as an idol for how they present themselves and for being a well-known magical warrior. I bring her up as she is a very important character and has a larger role in another season, so table that for now, we'll get back to it. But this season would dig into more of Star's family lore, as well as the lore of Muni itself, where she's from, and we get to see her explore more about magic in general, leading to us learning about the Magic High Commission, who are a group of beings from different dimensions who all wield magical abilities and oversee all magic activity in the universe. It's a cool concept and a way to essentially police magic being used from getting out of hand, as there are evil players out there who, yes, are up to no good, and yes, they will start making trouble in your neighborhood. Glossaric himself was actually one of the original founders of the MHC. Now, partway through the season, a major moment happens where Star ends up having her Book of Magic stolen by Ludo, meaning that Glossaric was stolen as well. He is bound to the book and essentially forced to teach Ludo magic, as he's now back in the picture. But this really sets up what happens later at the end, and wow, the ending of season 2 really ramps things up with 2 episodes that are packed with so much going on, with both episodes here providing some more push for the feeling Star may have for Marco. In general, this episode focuses on Star having to participate in this song day tradition where a songwriter sings about you in front of everyone in the kingdom, but she doesn't want it sugar-coated and made to sound like being a princess means you have to be perfect, wanting the real her to be represented in the song instead. Meanwhile, Star's mother, who is a part of the MHC, ends up going on a secret mission to find where Ludo had been, as she ends up finding out that he has the other piece of Star's wand. Before she has a chance to suit up and deal with this, she is reminded of Star's song day, not giving her enough time to finish her secret mission beforehand and has to go attend this. And the whole factoid of Star losing the book and any of the information that her mother has just found out are all secrets. So the big kicker comes when everything has to focus on the song being performed in front of everyone. A song that includes things like exposing the fact that Star lost the book along with Glossaric, the fact that her parents knew and wanted to keep it a secret from the general public and the MHC, and oh yeah, that she's madly in love with Marco. As everything kind of falls into disarray from that, Star ends up escaping out of there, especially after Marco tries to confront her about her feelings for him, and that's how that episode just kind of ends. The next episode, she deals with the awkwardness that is definitely there now between her and Marco, as she tries to understand what she truly feels and how she wishes things would go back to the way they were before that information came out. But on the flip side of things, the MHC are trying to go and deal with this Ludo problem, and, you know, get the book and the wand piece back. But Ludo ends up being taken over by Toffee, who was able to survive the events of last season's ending, and there are way too many parallels to Jujutsu Kaisen here. First off, earlier in the season, we deal with with one of Toffee's fingers being found, and now he is using Ludo's body as a vessel. So basically, yeah, he's Sukuna. Either way, the MHC is basically defeated, Star's mom tells her that she needs to leave Earth, and Star rushes to admit to Marco that she does in fact like him beyond just being friends, before she then rushes off and disappears, leaving us with this extremely somber and sad ending to the season that, once again, really makes you want to continue watching. Not only was the storytelling elevated this season, the narrative in general was exciting, and towards the end here got pretty dark. Seriously, some of the visuals, like when the rest of the MHC returned to where Ludo was at after he was alone with the queen, and then just seeing her laying on the floor with her eyes darkened out was a jaw-dropping moment. Aside from that, having more depth to characters like Ludo in general, getting a deeper side of his story, a look into his family life, and seeing more about it did a lot for actually feeling something for his character, and done so where the viewer gets to infer and discover deeper layers to it all without it being explained to you. Also, Ludo just kind of reminds me of Stewie Griffin. I don't really know how to explain that, he just does.
Let me tell you about my family.
With the dooth. Now, before we continue on to the back half of the series, I wanted to talk a bit about the creation of the show. The series was created by Darren Nefsey, who wanted to bring what influenced her growing up and fuse it into her ideas. Anime was big for her, growing up in the time of Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon starting to have their rumblings in the United States before the larger anime booms of the 2000s, 2010s, and current day. In her third year of college, Darren created the base concept of Star, at least as a character, with a bunch of details regarding who she is, what the premise of the show would be, and more being morphed and changed over the years naturally. This will be something I specifically speak about a little bit later in the video because we will get a chance to actually see what this means thanks to more recent events. But taking most of her inspiration from Sailor Moon, the magical girl genre was something she really wanted to play around with. And seeing at this time how her anime influences weren't yet as adopted by the West as they are today, this would be her drive to blend in more of that into her work. Seeing as how she had wanted to be like Sailor Moon as a kid, letting her imagination hope it could be possible, she envisioned Star being similar, a girl who doesn't have magical powers but has the want and desire to have them. Back when it was only Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon as the big two that were making the jump to the US, they were pitted against each other as a bit of one being the boy show and one being the girl show, which would have inspired Marco's character to be a bit of a Dragon Ball Z type of fan who would then clash with Star, having them be enemies based on their interests. More and more media influences from her life would be included in what made Star versus the Forces of Evil what it was. There were several other anime, there was stuff like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but a pretty unique and important one would be the anime The Fantastic Adventures of Unico, a 1980s one-episode pilot of a series that didn't continue on but instead became a couple of animated films all based off of a 1970s manga series. The look and feel of Unico would be something that Darren had everyone who works on the show check out. She stated that, "I looked at TV over the years and I have had to go to Japan when I was younger to find the cartoons that had the characters that I wanted to see. It was always a question of, well, why isn't that on TV in the US? She notes stuff like Kim Possible being a great example of what she'd want to see more of, but there wasn't enough for her to feel satisfied. Once the series was pitched to Disney, the show would go through some changes, having it become the exact show we'd see it as, and again, I'll speak on that more in a little bit, but to give the show the right amount of traction for viewers to get excited about it before it officially premieres, a different type of approach was taken. To promote this new series coming out, Star vs. the Forces of Evil was able to make a bit of a splash half a year before it would premiere thanks to its presence at San Diego Comic-Con. Before every panel Disney put on related to their TV animation side of things, they would play the opening title sequence to Star, getting people in attendance to take notice of it, and eventually, thanks to someone recording it, it went up on YouTube, and the response was pretty big. This garnered attention on this new show, it spawned fan art based on the intro alone, and most importantly, a pre-show fan base excited to see what this show would fully be like. I mean, there's fan fiction already, there's people doing costumes, and some folks are already figuring things out about the show just from listening to the Star theme song. It's super cool. I'm totally blown away by how dedicated the fan base already is, especially since they really haven't seen our show yet. Darren was clearly excited to see her idea she's been working on for so long finally being realized and having so many new fans ready to support the show before it even came out. It was a smart strategy from Disney to tease this new show that would then be taken and ran with all on its own thanks to the curiosity of fans. Now that we know about how it all came together and what led to all the excitement the show had and the reception the show would receive as it was on the air, let's continue on and talk about the back half of the series and then discuss how it ended and how it was received then.
Star versus the Forces of Evil. We'll be right back. Back back to Star versus the Forces of Evil.
Picking things up in the third season, we start off with a television movie titled The Battle for Muni, which really was just the first 4 episodes of the season put together to become this film, but we do get a lot of lore packed in here to start filling in a lot of the questions or gaps of knowledge we didn't know yet. We learn about how Toffee ended up killing Moon's mother in the past, and that through the use of dark magic from a previous queen named Eclipsa, Moon was able to defeat Toffee. And to fast forward to what's going on now, Toffee is using Ludo's body, with Ludo being able to rule Muni at the moment. But here's where we get further into the realm of magic. Literally, because Star ends up literally entering the realm of magic in order to confront Toffee. The realm is not doing so great, and while Star is in there dealing with that, Moon on the outside is talking to Toffee through Ludo, making a deal where Star would be returned alive in exchange for his finger, which would fully revive him. While Moon does this over the fact of trying to save her daughter, Toffee tries to pull a fast one, come back to life, and peace out without giving Star back. But Star ends up finding some untainted magic from the realm of being able to come back out of the realm more powerful than ever, with a new wand and a new powerful state where she absolutely obliterates Toffee. Well, almost. He survived it, kind of, but thanks to Ludo, he is then actually defeated. Marco does end up coming in handy partway through this, even rescuing Star from being chained up at one point, which reunites them for now. But as for where season 3 then goes, we bring in the character of Eclipsa properly, who brings in a lot of other issues and situations going on that now get brought up. At one point, she ends up becoming freed from her crystallized prison, where Star ends up meeting her and they start to become friends, as she would technically be her great, etc. grandmother. But Star's mother and the rest of the MHC end up wanting to re-imprison her thanks to them not trusting her. And we learn that she was originally imprisoned for the crime of marrying a monster, which is seen as this big no-no, adding in more of how the monsters are seen in a discriminatory way. Star stands up for Eclipsa and ends up helping her not get frozen again, and now just put under house arrest, and the friendship that Star and Eclipsa develop is pretty interesting, especially while Star ends up struggling with powers and how things are feeling from what she's experiencing, like sleepwalking, or sleep flying through other dimensions. Basically, the real history of Muni seems to have been changed in order to keep things in order, of how royalty has pushed away monsters and made them out to be the source of problems, and to be looked at as monsters. And Eclipsa's monster husband is frozen in crystal as well, and of course, naturally, she'll want to free him, but we'll get to that. And there's this whole trial bit where Eclipsa faces the MHC, but it turned out to be a whole trick set up by Moon, Star, and Eclipsa to get the rest of the MHC to admit the truth about a hidden baby swapping secret in order to not let a baby who is part monster be the heir to the throne and be able to wield magic, leading to Star and Moon realizing that technically they aren't related to Eclipsa and that they aren't royalty and don't have a true relation to any of this. And it's all really cool how this is discovered in the show and how the characters have to deal with it, as we see specifically how Star handles dealing with it at the end of the episode as she frees Eclipsa from her cuffs and storms out. Marco's storyline this season has him having this mainly awkward relationship with Star based off of where we left off, plus the fact that Star stayed in Muni while he went back to Earth, and has such a hard time coping with this that he decides he wants to go and live in Muni, making things even more weird between him and Star at that moment. They do come back together properly to where Star welcomes him in better and he gets to feel more at home, so that's nice. Overall, the whole Eclipsa storyline, once it really starts going on, takes full attention away from basically anything else going on. None of it seems as interesting, sadly, and we do get to where the season ends, which basically has Moon going missing, so in her absence, Star becomes queen, which is something that she doesn't feel completely comfortable with after finding out the truth of what happened to Eclipsa and how she isn't technically in the royal bloodline. So after finding out and dealing with Eclipsa's actual daughter, Meteora, who turned out to be another character who we dealt with in the show already, that being Miss Heinous, and Eclipsa ends up helping Star stop her daughter, reverting her daughter back into a baby as Star tells her to keep the wand, wanting to return what her family had stolen from her, and in a double meaning, also returning her daughter to her, and in a triple meaning, what we'll see happen at the start of the 4th season. But here, Eclipsa ends up leaving with the wand and her daughter, heading off to go be with where her husband was frozen, ending the season on who knows what happens next. I mean, Star doesn't even know. Comparatively to the previous season, season 3 does feel like it went more downward than up, and there is a lot of good. I do think there were a lot of highlights, specifically the trial episode and how the real trick of the plan played out. The writing was still able to keep a solid level of comedy and drama that made me enjoy what had come before, but it just didn't have that specific punch and kick that season 1 and especially season 2 had. And with the ending of this season still being a technical cliffhanger, there was a bit more to resolve here. Now, this is where some things started to fall apart for a lot of fans of the show. So so I was definitely cautious heading into the final season based on everything I had heard. The fourth and final season of Star vs. the Forces of Evil picks things right up from where we left off to give us the answer of what happens next, and that's the fact that Eclipsa is now the queen once more, with Star stepping down from the position, in a way giving her back what her family had taken. So there's that triple meaning I was saying. Life is now better for the monster population thanks to this, and as we build up to Eclipsa finally being able to have her husband free from the crystal prison he's in, we see how a lot of her actions end up being seen as villainous or cruel and living up to the worries that others had had about her, leaving Star to start seeing her a bit in a different light as well, now clashing with her ideals and ways of ruling. But the big moment here is really getting to understand that Eclipsa's husband, Globgor, isn't this awful and evil monster that he's been made out to be, and when he is freed, he's only ever had the intention to keep his family safe and be a good father to his daughter. This whole display of truth in front of everyone leads to a general acceptance and understanding of Eclipsa and Globgor, and things begin to move in a more peaceful direction. For the most part. I don't want to say it's completely like that, because it's not, especially when Mina Loveberry comes back into play as she ends up teaming up with the MHC to use Moon's powers to power up some magical armor, leading to Mina fighting Globgor, and then Eclipsa putting the citizens under threat of all of this. But Star and friends end up coming in to help fight, but most of them are defeated aside from Star, so she ends up going super rainbow mode to hold her own in a fight against Mina, the very character she originally looked up to. This allows Eclipsa to use a spell to destroy the special armor Mina had, but this wasn't Mina. This was just one of her many soldiers who are all donning the same armor. So before the big conclusion here, we do get a little moment between Star and Marco where they both finally admit their feelings towards each other after spending so much time the last couple seasons having focuses on other relationships. They kiss one another before we enter the ending to the series. There's a lot that gets revealed or just kind of tossed at you here, and we see that Mina is moving forward with her own plans as an oath that she has to Queen Solaria, Eclipse's mother, to wipe out every monster. As things get worse and worse, Star's attitude towards magic in general has completely changed, going from this overzealous girl excited about magic to now wanting nothing to do with it, wishing for magic to be completely destroyed from existence. She heads to Glossaric to sort this whole thing out, learning that it is in her destiny to destroy magic, but at the cost of not being with Marco, as well as if she would do this, that she would essentially make Glossaric and magical beings in general cease to exist. Before anything is done, Star heads back to Marco, telling him that she will destroy magic, and in this season finale, Marco comes along with her to the magic realm, holding her hand as they enter in to finish the job, but Star holds on to the information and the fact that after this is done, Marco and her won't be able to be together. And then with Star not having all the power alone to destroy magic, she ends up being joined by her mother, Eclipsa, Meteora, ancestral spirits, with one of them being Queen Solaria, leading to Mina, who finds her way into the realm of magic to stop them, to then get distracted and defeated. And together they end up destroying the magic, and as the realm is collapsing, they all need to go their separate ways, giving us a moment with Star and Marco, where without saying the truth of them not seeing each other again, Marco understands this as they emotionally and quietly say goodbye. This is until Star jumps back into the realm, only to find Marco there waiting as well, as the two decide to see what happens if they stay there as it all comes crashing down, leading to them hugging one another as they say that with or without magic, they belong together. In the end, when a white light engulfs them, Star is eventually found passed out by her mother as Marco wakes up back on Earth, and they both notice a portal in the sky connecting their worlds together. They end up doing whatever they can to get to this portal, heading towards each other before it closes, but in what seems like they couldn't make it, a colliding of both worlds happens, fusing Muni and Earth together, ending on the two of them with smiles on their face saying, hey, as the series comes to an end. So yeah, there is no more magic, everything seems pretty happy and peaceful, the MHC are basically all dead and, okay, well, that's grim, but that's how it ended, and it left a lot of fans of the series pretty unhappy, and I can see why.
Star versus the Forces of Evil. We'll be right back. Back to Star versus the Forces of Evil.
All's well sometimes doesn't ends well. And Star versus the Forces of Evil had quite a rocky ending, leading to a lot of negative responses from the fans. And listen, I get it, sometimes fandoms get pretty passionate. After the first season of the show, it was clear that the series had a lot of fans, and they wanted more. More adventures, more magic, but more importantly, more of the characters and the stories. This would lead to the expansion of what the show was, going from these one-off episodes to ongoing narratives things, as well as building up the characters, specifically Star and Marco, even more, as well as beyond that, a wide scope of other characters as well. There was a lot of excitement from Darren and those working on the show to take things in this direction. I'm super excited about season 2. I feel like second seasons for any show are when things really begin to gel. You found out what works and you keep doing it and you do it better. It's been really great to have this opportunity to keep going with this story. There are 22 episodes in season 2, so we had a lot longer to play around with the characters. I feel like something gelled in season 2 and everybody has been so awesome and gets the characters and gets to run with that. Quotes like that, or the details about Darren feeling that the second season is the fruition of what she wanted to do when she created the character, built in so much excitement and hope for the fans, especially since parts that they wanted more of were going to be explored. We're working on our second season now, and it really makes you go, oh, we should explore this character too, or they're interested in this aspect, maybe we'll try to work that into the story somehow. And now it's so great because I couldn't do that when I was younger, but now people tweet stuff at me, and you get an instant connection with the fans. This directly showed that we are in this instant feedback era, and more so that fans of the series had a more influential voice on certain aspects, at least with future aspects, as season 2 was already in production before season 1 was out, but some things organically came together that aligned with what the fans of the series wanted anyway. Darren and the crew still saw all of the feedback, ideas, and thoughts that the fans had, and of course, why not deliver more of what works and what the fans are looking for, while also not losing your creative vision. All of this to say that the show was clearly evolving, and as the seasons went on, you directly see that. Star in general would go through changes. It's something that Darren wanted to showcase as a way to truly experience the growth she goes through. This expansion of the series juts out in every direction. We would get to dig into stories and details about many other characters, and build out this show in a way that felt natural, and was what the fans wanted. So then, what happened? Star vs. the Forces of Evil was a massive success for Disney. The ratings were good, the viewership was great, but how did the show go from something that was so heavily favored to leaving a whole fan base being vocally pretty upset and disappointed? When the fourth and final season came out, there was a lot of excitement to see how this whole series would conclude, with Darren saying, "We put our heart and soul into this season, and can't wait to celebrate the exciting conclusion of the series with our fans who have remained so loyal throughout this journey." But there was a big letdown that was felt, and you can think what you want or feel how you feel about most of this final season, because it's really the ending itself that feels so out of place, really. The ending honestly treats magic as this bad thing when the show never treated it that way. It's not like there wasn't a lot of bad done with magic and lots of problems caused over the existence of magic, but it was the evils and wrongdoings of the others that were shown as the bad people they are. It's who was wielding the magic. Magic was both the tool of destruction and the solution to save the day, and while we do see Star grow throughout each season as she becomes a lot more skilled in magic, she nearly flips on a dime to wanting to destroy magic completely, and all of the other characters kind of just go along with it and agree. Like, there really isn't any pushback. Even the magical characters who would cease to exist don't really care. There could be stuff seen here as Star breaking away from her burdens and stress so that she can become a metaphorical butterfly on her own as she continues to grow up, or even seeing it as the reign of royalty having corruption and ending the monarch, which in turn is another way to see it as a butterfly reference, as all their powers disappear along with their royalty status. We see that there is this big focus on discrimination and how monsters and people aren't seen as equal, and how that drives so many important parts of the plot and some characters' ideals. But this doesn't lead to anything really in the end. It becomes so secondary that it feels like at some point in the final few episodes that there's a whole bunch of episodes missing to find some sort of conclusion to that while building up this all of a sudden anti-magic angle. It feels disjointed, a bit forced, and not satisfying from what was built up to what was presented in the end. There is a big nonsensical angle here to where I feel things just happen to happen, like the worlds colliding. Why? If there is no more magic, how is there a portal? Why do some creatures that look like they would be magical still exist? Why was the focus shifted more and more into the territory of playing into characters' romantic relationships instead of narrowing in where the plot was going? Well, that last one is a product of what they were open to in the first place, getting into a feedback loop of what the fans were into or wanted more of on the shipping characters together side of things, leading the last season specifically to feel more focused on characters dealing with their relationships, only to then bring it back to Star and Marco being together in the end. There's no more magic, worlds have collided, nothing makes sense, but Star and Marco, yeah, they sure are there together in the end. Now, I don't hate that they're together. I think that there were some great moments between them, even from this episode and how they handled understanding the thought of not seeing each other ever again, and once more going down with the realm together. But in the end, was too much fan service the problem? Did people enjoy them just being friends more and maybe didn't want to see them come together in the end? Heck, who knows? There's too many characters that get sidelined and used in the background or just for bits rather than who they were built up to be in previous seasons. And then you have Meehan here, who ends up being the main bad guy of the season in the end, I guess, and it's not even really close to what Ludo or Toffee felt like. I will say that I do like that in appearance, it is as if Darren had the fusion of Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z come together for her design, and that's kind of cool based on how this whole thing kind of started in the first place. Regardless though, after so much good, all of the build-up and intrigue that the show had done so well really just doesn't go anywhere in the very end. Yeah, the other seasons have enough enjoyment in them to go back and watch and still have a great time, but I understand how the series feels pretty tainted by an ending that doesn't feel like it cared about the journey. Instead, it tried to make the destination more important, and you know how the saying goes, sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. I think you can still view the show in that way, but just with a bit of a sour aftertaste at the end for what happens, because I do enjoy the journey. The ending just hurts a little, or a lot. You know, it doesn't feel conclusive. Fans were not happy with this, and Darren ended up getting a chance to speak about the ending during an AMA on Reddit, where when confronted about the choices made in the ending said, "My goal was to create a satisfying ending that still left room for more. I feel like it's in the DNA of the universe to solve one problem but create another. That's Star Butterfly. I didn't want to solve everything and leave the fans nothing to play with. Plus, if I ever get to do more with Star, I want something to play with." Darren essentially details that she got to end the show the way she wanted to, feeling lucky to achieve 4 seasons in total. This wasn't the case of Disney stepping in to control the outcome of the show or have Darren and the crew rush to a finale because the series was going to come to an end. This was Darren's vision. This was her ending, and she was satisfied and left it open for others to interpret and for her to maybe get the chance to come back to one day. But there's the problem. If the fan base feels alienated and betrayed now thanks to the ending, what incentive would they have to come back? Would having more episodes just be continuing in the series the way it left off with no magic, or would it be finding ways to rewrite circumstances to reverse some decisions made? Either way, both options sound less than exciting for any fan of the show, whether you're someone who was there from the beginning and watching it as it premiered, or someone like me who watched it for the first time recently in a binge-like setting. There is no right or wrong opinion here to have. If you dislike the ending, that's okay. If you like the ending, that's okay. But I feel it's hard to feel satisfied either way because like 90% of the series, especially those first 2 seasons, are so extremely well done. So in contrast, the ending just feels so underwhelming, like unbelievably underwhelming. Even if there was a bit more to explain when it came to the final episode, the decisions made and the colliding of the worlds at the end, I don't feel it's enough to save what it was going for because it feels so foreign to what happened throughout the rest of the series. Now, the only way I can really kind of understand explaining why the worlds collided and became one is through the use of the term in the show, cleaved. Now, the final episode is called Cleaved, which if you go all the way back to the end of season 1, where Star has to destroy her wand and we're left with half of it going forward, Glossaric talks to her parents about what cleaved is, saying something can be cleaved apart, meaning it is separated or split into multiple pieces, but he also mentions that something can be cleaved together. And if that's what happened at the end, I guess the 2 worlds were cleaved together, which if that is an actual explanation for what happened, then that's at least a little bit more understandable. But you tell me if I'm right or wrong about that theory in the comments.
Star versus the forces of evil. We'll be right back. Back to Star versus the forces of evil.
Let's take a moment though to switch away from that and talk about something that's pretty cool in regards to the series. So funny enough, when working on this video, the original pilot for the show released online. And I'm not talking about the pilot that was released in 2023, that was the one for Disney. I'm talking about the one made for Nickelodeon. That's right, Star versus the Forces of Evil is yet another cartoon that Nickelodeon ended up passing on that went on to have its own form of major success. And if you didn't know, here's one of the most famous examples, Adventure Time. But to be fair, Cartoon Network technically passed on Star vs. the Forces of Evil before Nickelodeon would. The pilot made for Disney was from 2012 and had a lot more in common in what it would fully become a few years later as an official show, whereas the Nickelodeon pilot was made in 2009 and featured a completely different look and style for the series, thanks to the series having its 10-year anniversary the other day on January 18th. A YouTube channel named Derps released this found Nickelodeon pilot on January 20th, 2025, and it firstly revealed the original title for the series, Star and the Forces of Evil, which isn't too much of a change at the end of the day. Rather than how the official series would turn out with the main character of Star Butterfly and the story itself, this pilot shows off a younger version of Star who isn't popular and sees stuff from her made-up magical land interacting with the real world while others are oblivious. Along with this was the original pitch bible that showcased what the series would be about, having Star believing that she is this magical superhero type of character and having this whole other world detailed out that is real to her but not to anyone else. She is supposed to be this bright source of light, color, and energy that the real world she lives in doesn't have, but she must, in her own way and own situations to face, save the day. From all of the images and sketches that are there, you can really see just how different it feels from the final version of the series we'd get with Disney. While I think the look of the show itself is good, I really like the look of this pilot. I don't know why, but there is just something about it that feels right. I really can't explain what I mean by that. I guess I just think it looks really good. If you're a big fan of Star versus the Forces of Evil, then this is one heck of a treat that you should check out and dig into. I will link that video down below in the description of this video. Star vs. the Forces of Evil was massive for Disney. It premiered as the #1 most watched animated series debut, having 1.2 million viewers tuning in. It grew a relatively large fan base from there, and it was pretty well liked up until the end. It's a show that grew from something less plot-driven that turned into an overarching narrative. A lot of other shows from this time would do the same thing, slowly building up more for you to take away from an episode and follow along with. Sadly, this structure ended up leading to its downfall, not being able to have the most satisfying conclusion, leading to how some may look back not so fondly on the series as they once may have. At this point, the conversation has shifted from people talking really positively about the series to people mainly speaking about it in a negative light because of the end, despite the majority of the series being great and well liked by the fans. A bad ending can just be a bad ending. The rest of the series could still be worth checking something out for, but sometimes it can be so jarring that it taints the experience of going on the journey to get there in the first place. Would I recommend Star vs. the Forces of Evil? Well, yeah, I still would. It would just have an asterisk next to it as a warning of a possible bad ending which may push a good amount of people away from checking it out, which is a shame because I really like this show. I like the characters, I like the stories, I like the setting. I just don't particularly like the ending. Not because I disagree with the choices so heavily and needed it to end in the exact way I wanted it to, but for the fact that it feels like it doesn't respect me as a viewer like the rest of the show had up to that point. What I set out to do was create a really cool character. I'm really glad we're in an era where you can have a flawed female character, a realistic female character. That's how it should be. But I don't feel like I set out to make Star a role model. She's very much herself, and that's the important thing. Darren set out to make exactly what she wanted to, and I think Star vs. the Forces of Evil is more good than, well, evil. There's still a lot to love about the series, and I can respect an artist finishing something the exact way they wanted to, and you can truly feel her soul poured into this series from the start to the finish, regardless of how you felt about it. But tell me how you felt about it. What are your thoughts on Star vs. the Forces of Evil? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe for more videos coming soon, but until then, later.